2 months ago today, a fire tore through Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The blaze destroyed the Gothic roof and toppled the famous spire there. Now, the cathedral is rising from the ashes. Notre Dame is holding its first Mass since the devastating fire. You're watching live pictures from inside the cathedral. For safety reasons, only around 30 people, mostly priests and restoration workers, are attending the Mass, and they are wearing hard hats. The Catholic faithful can watch a broadcast of the Mass on a religious TV channel. Now, standing by for us in Paris is French journalist Anne-Elisabeth Moutet. Now, as we saw, the cathedral, it's still dangerous enough to require hard hats. And yet this Mass is going ahead today. Clearly some symbolism there. How important is this moment for Paris?
For Paris, for Catholics, for the rest of the world, I should say, it's a very important moment. It's the reaffirmation of continuation of a faith and life after the catastrophe. And your commenter just a second ago said that the place is still unsafe, that everyone is wearing a hard hat, including the Archbishop of Paris, Monseigneur Petit, but that the Mass is not even in the Great Nave. The Great Nave is not secured yet. The Mass is in a chapel behind the Great Nave, and it's almost like a private Mass. Of course, the public can't be let in. Everybody's standing up because there are no seats. And it's really in a situation of catastrophe, as not much work has started yet, and that's an understatement. This reconfers the destiny of Notre Dame, unbroken destiny of being a cathedral.
Now, today marks, of course, 2 months since the fire. Do we know any more about how the repair works are proceeding?
We know that not much is proceeding because it was a very complex fire. The fire was not down in the cathedral itself; it was up in the rafters, so to speak, in something called the forest, which is the 800-year-old beams made of oak, whole trunks that held the roof together, and that's what burned. And of course, because it lasted so long, the entire cathedral was showered with burning debris, and the temperature went up to 800 degrees. So right now, what they do most is protection and assessing exactly the condition of security, the way the stones and the rest of the cathedral has withstood such heat for such a long period, what is fragile, what can be kept. That not only has there not been much work going on, but we also know, perhaps this is just a delay waiting to see what the work will cost, but there haven't been so much of the promised money for that rebuilding either coming in.
Anne-Elisabeth Moutet in Paris for us as Notre Dame holding its first Mass since that devastating fire. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course, many years of restoration and repair still lie ahead, and you might think it's all being paid for by that flood of donations promised by billionaires and companies after the blaze, but it turns out the church is still waiting for much of that money. DW reporter Jared Reed has been following up on those donations. Jared, first, just remind us, how much money was pledged for these repairs after the fire?
Well, after the fire, there was some pretty determined philanthropism. We had all these rich billionaires and companies lining up to say, I'm going to give 100 million euros, 200 million, 400 million, and eventually around €1 billion was raised in a very short amount of time, which created a lot of publicity for these people. Also some criticism because it looked like they were all sort of trying to one-up each other. As you correctly say, the fire happened 2 months ago today, and you think that would be enough time to write that check or hit the send button on the internet banking, but none of these rich donors have paid up yet. André Finot is a spokesperson for the Notre Dame in Paris. This is a quote from him. "The big donors haven't paid, not a cent. They want to know what exactly their money is being spent on and if they agree to it before they hand it over, and not just to pay employees' salaries." He was speaking to AP. So it's pretty incredible. It seems like there are many, many strings attached to this money, of which around 10% has been received overall in these donations. The employees he's talking about are the 150 restoration workers that are working on the cathedral at the moment.
So there is already being work done right now. I mean, who's picking up the check?
Well, it's coming from much more humble sources. It's coming from American tourists and French citizens. They're the ones that are donating much, much smaller amounts to organisations, non-profits involved with the restoration work. In this month, they've given around 4 million euros to fund the first part of the restoration. We have to remember time is of the essence here. Historians have told us that through the centuries, Notre Dame's been kind of neglected. And after the fire, President Macron gave a timeline of 5 years to get this finished. There's that. Plus, there's also a health issue. After the fire, 300 tonnes of lead dust was released into the atmosphere. And so a lot of work needs to be done to clean that up and to do it quickly, to make the site safe for to rebuild on.
So these big donors, have they responded at all to that quote that we heard from you?
Yeah, so some of them have come out and said, yes, it's true, we haven't paid the money, and that's because we want to see what the restoration plans are and whether they're in line with what we think they should be. And kind of what the thinking is that a lot of them want their names and their money on the end product and are not necessarily interested in doing kind of the boring work of making this site clean and safe for the restoration. So we have to see what happens over the next couple of months and 5 years.
All right, well, we'll see if they can hit send on that bank account. Jared Reed, thank you very much.